All right, let me just get to the beginning of the slides. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Arnav. I'm the co-founder of Enterpret, and today I'll be talking about a system of intelligence for the voice of customer is critical for product-led growth. A little bit of background about me. So I'm an NLP researcher. I've done and worked in NLP for nearly 6 years, and currently I work mostly as a product manager. My dream was to become a tennis player, but that did not pan out, and hence I'm like the co-founder of Enterpret. Why are we all here? We want to build products that develop an irrational relationship with the customer. So the customer sticks around even when new and shiny competitors come to the market. And just like every other relationship, we need to listen to our customers to be able to build and help them. But listening to customers as their voices scale is extremely challenging. And if their voice is not heard, the customers start hating these companies instead of actually being their rational supporters. So I was curious about how the best product-led companies did this. So I went about and interviewed nearly hundreds of product managers at product-led growth companies. These are all household names, all products that people love. And everybody unanimously said that leveraging the voice of customer is critical in product development processes. They would spend hours and hours every week triaging, collecting, understanding, and responding to feedback. That is how they would de-risk their assumptions, deepen their understanding of the problem, and monitor feedback to do fast follow-ups after a launch. But the process is completely broken. Most often than not, the loudest customer wins, and there isn't a complete picture of all voices that is presented. Manually triaging feedback was laborious, required a lot of discipline, and required high degree of coordination between different teams. But they still went ahead and did it. So to deepen understanding of the difficulties companies generally face, I'll start by painting the picture of a hypothetical company, Swift. Swift is a product-led growth note-taking company. We'll talk about the amount of effort that they put in to stay on top of voice of customer. The name is hypothetical, but the problems they face are common across the industry. So we'll talk about three phases: the build phase, the measure phase, and the learn phase, and how the voice of customer played a critical role in all of them. Let's start by double-clicking into measure. So the customer interacted at various different places with the company. They interacted in social media and review platforms, which is what the marketing team was looking after. User research, conducted surveys, did user interviews. Support, because the product was complicated, had lots of features. Support helped out with product help issues, resolving bugs, escalating usability issues, escalating feature requests. There was a community as well of ardent users who would discuss the product in detail. They would share tips of how to best use the product. They would help out new users whenever they would ask for help. They would discuss what feature requests that they would want to see in the product. And finally, most of the revenue came from the enterprise sales motion. That is where most of the dollars were made. And these enterprise users had different needs, different demands, and Swift always wanted to win more deals. Most businesses have 3 or such more channels present, and all of these channels have different ways to measure the voice of customer. Let's look at support first. Since Swift is a complicated tool with lots of features and workflows, it's scaling fast. It has a lot of users which always request more features, more workflows. And then Swift is entirely product-led in terms of its growth function. So product is the one that acquires users, it is the one that activates users, it is the one that engages, it is the one that retains, and it is the one that monetizes as well. So anytime any of these step is broken, this is where support team comes and helps them out. So users face bugs, feature request, usability issues, and payment issues, which lead to nearly 3,000 plus support tickets per month. Once every support ticket is closed, the agent would read the support ticket, and then out of an ever-growing list of labels, because the product is very complicated, out of this ever-growing list of labels, support agent will see, okay, this is what actually this ticket is about, and this is the feedback I'd want to communicate to the product builders. And then once every 2 weeks, all of this would be collected and summarized into a bi-weekly report, which will be shared with different product teams. User research, on the other hand, would continue with their ongoing or one-time research projects, which would lead to nearly 5,000 plus survey responses, hundreds of interview sessions, and all of them would be recorded in some form or the other. They would be analyzed, thoroughly tagged, and a report would be created and shared with different product teams. Similarly, the community of ardent users of Swift who talk about feature requests, ask for help, share tips. And there are two such major communities. One is a community forum where like 2,000 plus messages are discussed, and other is Discord where like 30,000 plus messages are shared per month. And there is a community manager who makes sure that the community keeps running along smoothly. And whenever such interesting feedback is found, the community manager would share it with the correct product team. The sales team, on the other hand, would have a lot of deals in the pipeline. They would have nearly 2,000 plus gong calls per month. Whenever an input from a particular product stakeholder was needed, they would tag that product stakeholder in the gong call. The product stakeholder would listen to that gong call. And similarly, some deals are won, some deals are lost. And then the sales team would write down those notes and collect those hundreds of notes in Airtable or Asana and share it with the product team. And finally, marketing. So the Swift is very famous, talked about quite often. So like 5,000 plus tweets per month. The marketing team measures the brand sentiment as to how that's been trending, as well as if they stumble upon anything interesting, that is again shared with the right product stakeholders. So if you look at the overall view of it, so the voice of customer through the marketing team reaches the product team, but there is no reporting on it, no summarization of it. The voice of customer through user research reaches the product team, but it follows an entirely different taxonomy. The voice of customer through support reaches the product team, but is highly inaccurate and again has its own different taxonomy. Similarly, voice of customer through community reaches the product team, but there is no aggregate reporting present on it. It's only interesting examples that are shared. And then through the sales team, these are only the view of the salesperson present in win-loss notes that is shared. The actual calls, the actual conversation, they cannot be analyzed, and which required the product builders to go ahead and listen to those sales calls. So the entire view was siloed, inaccurate, and incomplete. After different functions measured the voice of customer from different channels, came the need to learn from it, to develop a deeper understanding of the customer pain, needs, and wants, to effectively prioritize amongst like the hundreds of possible things that they could be doing. And they needed to prioritize and sequence these problems so that they can deliver the most strategic business and user value. So the voice of customer, like we just saw, flowed through different functions. But at the end of it, it is no longer the voice of customer. It has morphed into the voice of stakeholders, which is what is reaching the product builders. And that is a critical distinction, because even after spending so much time and effort to measure the voice of customer, it wasn't really helpful for product builders. So in order to learn from all of this, the product builders would go back to these sources where customer interactions happened, and then they would search, let's say, Twitter, go through sales notes, search Zendesk, listen to gong calls, search community forums, and so on and so forth, collect interesting pieces of feedback, along with all the other pieces of feedback that has been shared with them, manually label it, and then get some understanding of the voice of customer. And this entire process is in turn extremely laborious, time-taking, requires you to understand and use different tools, requires a lot of discipline, as anybody who's ever tagged data would know. And yet, regardless of all of these challenges, and regardless of how busy product managers are, they would do it to make sure that their decisions are data-backed and that they're confident on those decisions. And finally, once it is decided, hey, this is what we want to build, and we get into the build phase, they wanted to share the evidence of what they have analyzed to make sure that the entire team has that understanding. So whatever analysis that was done was then put into a presentable format, which required laborious effort. And similarly, a few customer verbatims were found, which best described the customer pain. And then the building would happen, designers would get involved, engineers would get involved, QA would get involved, and the feature is ready to be shipped. But once the feature is launched, the most delightful user experience that a product could provide is to reach out to those users who shared that feedback in the first place, essentially closing the loop, which in itself was required high level of coordination internally. So product marketer would then reach out to these different functions to say, hey, we are shipping this new feature. Can you tell me who all asked for it? And all of these different functions would then figure out and then let the product marketer know that these are the different users. And then product marketing close the loop by informing them that, hey, your feedback was heard and this feature is now live. But because it required so much effort, it wasn't ever consistently done. And to recap, so to measure, it was siloed, it was inaccurate, it was incomplete. To learn from the voice of customer required retagging, it was extremely laborious and required a lot of discipline. And to build required high level of coordination, a lot of processes internally. And all of these problems made this a priority for Swift. And because of these inefficiencies, the flywheel of growth had inefficiencies and leakages, and it slowed down over a period of time. So the Swift realized this as well, and they wanted to go ahead and fix it. They wanted a system of intelligence for the voice of customer, as they realized it is critical for their growth. But what all is needed for it? So they set up 3 major components with which they can achieve this. The first is unified feedback repository. So that all feedback is collected at one place, all customer voices are being heard, and it isn't siloed in different systems. Once all the feedback is collected, then it is a question of structuring the unstructured text, giving it labels, so that it can then be used to learn and understand. The taxonomy, which is the labels or the structuring of that unstructured text, had to be automated because the scale is so high that no one can manually label it. At the same time, it needs to be adaptive because as the product evolves, the taxonomy would need to evolve as well. And finally, the third major piece is an interface where you can easily query, read feedback, and create reports so that it can be involved in the product development lifecycle. Let's double click into each one of those. So unified feedback repository. So no matter what the modality of the data is, whether it is support data, whether it is comm calls or surveys or social media or community forums or sales note or reviews, easily integrate all of them into one place so that there is one system of record for feedback. Once that is present, then this is where the magic happens. In the last few years, there have been incredible advancements in the field of NLP through large language models and whatnot, which has made it possible for the AI to learn these unique labels from the data itself. Once it learns these unique labels, it needs to then apply these unique labels on all incoming feedback. And as and when the product evolves, by let's say moving into newer geographies, newer features, new personas, or even a new product feedback channel, it would lead to new kind of feedback, and the AI would then again learn newer labels, apply it. This would ensure that your taxonomy stays up to date with your product. And finally, once all the feedback is collected and structured, we need an interface where we can easily read or listen to all feedback in one tool, a flexible analytical interface. So you can slice and dice feedback by user properties, by product areas, by operational metadata, and visualized trends. And this is critical because feedback in isolation isn't helpful. It is imperative that we know who shared that feedback as well, so that we can clearly understand what that feedback meant. So this is what was laid out, that they built a unified feedback repository, they built an automated adaptive voice of customer taxonomy, and an interface to query, read feedback, and create reports. And how was it leveraged at Swift? Let's look at an ideal state of Swift after they started using this modern feedback architecture. So during the build phase, how did they build with the voice of customers? They used it for three major purposes. First was prioritization, second, evidence, and third, close the loop. For prioritization, product leaders could come into the tool and evaluate the product intuition by quantifying the volume of feedback. They could see whether feature request A is more prominent or feature request B is more prominent for this kind of user. They could figure out that is usability issue A more prominent or usability issue B more prominent. And all of that happened without any laborious retagging or going to 10 different tools to collect the voice of customers. It was essentially consolidated, automatically quantified, and required no tagging effort on their end. And this is the exact evidence that they then went ahead and shared in their PRDs, in their documents, to show that, hey, this is how I have prioritized that this is what we need to work on. They also could figure out effective verbatims inside the tool so that the true voice of customer is represented in their documents. And this evidence is reproducible, inspectable, and easily findable. So it made learning of other team members as well quite easy. And finally, once the feature is built, closing the loop, which earlier required a lot of coordination between different functions to figure out who are the users who requested this feature, now became quite simple, because all they needed to do was filter by that feature request, get the list of users, and reach out to them saying, hey, your feedback was heard and the feature has been implemented. After build, they wanted to measure as to say the feature is live. How is it doing? What is the voice of customer about this feature now? So earlier, where the voice of customer was fragmented across different functions, all of which had different kinds of output, here, what does happen is that voice of customer for that feature is collected in one place, and a report is sent automatically every week, every month, which summarizes the feedback for that feature across all of these different tools. That is self-serve, has no dependency on different teams, and is entirely consolidated. Similarly, when let's say a product quality issue happens where something is taking too much time, an alert is raised on Slack, which informs the team to move fast and fix this issue so that product quality is maintained. Similarly, when a new feature is launched or something which is a big bet and you want to make sure that any initial breakages are fixed as quickly as possible, those are sent as alert to Slack as well, so that the team can respond very quickly to those. So we have built the feature, we're measuring it, we're making sure that we're aware of everything that's going on with the voice of customer for that feature. Now, how do we learn from it so that we can get into the next cycle of building? Where earlier, to build, product builders would go through different tools, perform searches, manually triage to get a view of the voice of customer. Now, product builders can just perform inquiries like product analytics on the voice of customer. What they could possibly do is they could read support tickets, survey responses, tweets, gong calls on in one tool. They could filter it by user properties, see top reasons of feedback for paid users, top regions of feedback for non-US users. They could filter it by type of feedback shared. What are the top feature requests? What are top bugs? What are top usability issues? Visualize trends. How is this feature request been trending over a period of time? Understand sentiment. Hey, I launched that feature. Did it improve the sentiment of this feature or not? Create reports so they can get summarized view in their inbox in an automated manner. So they're always aware of what's going on. And finally, join the feedback with user behavior. So for users who are retained versus users who are not retained, how is their feedback different? For users who are paid versus users who are free, how is their feedback different? So compare and contrast user behavior with the feedback that they shared to develop a deeper understanding of a cohort rather than just one person. And finally, with all of these functionalities, Swift was able to fix its growth trajectory. And that is what we're building at Enterpret as well, so that the build, measure, learn cycle, by leveraging the voice of customer, doesn't fail for fast scaling PLG companies. Thank you.